The soft jazz music drifted through the elegant dining room of Bellecourt as I sat across from my Aunt Patricia, trying to enjoy what was supposed to be a celebration dinner for my cousin's engagement. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in crisp white linens, while servers in pristine uniforms moved gracefully between guests who clearly belonged in this upscale establishment. I'd chosen Bellecourt specifically because it was Patricia's favorite restaurant, the place she brought all her wealthy friends to impress them, the place she'd mentioned countless times as the pinnacle of fine dining in our city. What she didn't know was why I'd been able to get us a primetime reservation on such short notice, or why the hostess had treated me with unusual deference when we arrived. "This place is exquisite as always," Patricia said, cutting into her $68 filet mignon with obvious satisfaction. "Of course, I suppose you've never been somewhere this nice before, have you, Emma?" I smiled politely and took a sip of the wine that had appeared at our table. A bottle I recognized as being from our reserve collection, though Patricia hadn't questioned why we'd received it without ordering it. "It's lovely," I replied, choosing not to mention that I ate here at least twice a week. Patricia was in her element tonight, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her jewelry catching the light every time she gestured. At 55, she'd built her identity around being the family's success story. The one who'd married well, lived in the right neighborhood, and surrounded herself with the right kind of people. "You know, Emma," she continued, dabbing her lips with the monogrammed napkin, "I've been thinking about your situation lately." "My situation? Here we go. I mean, you're 31 years old and you're still, well, what would you call it? Drifting?" I set down my fork carefully. "I wouldn't call it drifting, Aunt Patricia. I work very hard." "Oh, I'm sure you do, sweetheart. But working hard at what? You live in that tiny apartment, you drive that old car, you dress like—" She gestured vaguely at my simple black dress, like someone who shops at discount stores. The dress was actually a $400 piece from a boutique downtown, but I'd learned years ago that explaining such things to Patricia only led to more invasive questions about my finances. "I'm comfortable," I said simply. "Comfortable?" Patricia laughed, loud enough that other diners glanced our way. "Darling, comfortable is what people say when they've given up on ever having anything nice. When they've accepted mediocrity." She leaned forward, her voice taking on the tone she used when dispensing life advice to her perceived inferiors. "Look around this restaurant, Emma. Look at the people here, the elegance, the refinement. This is what success looks like. This is what happens when you make smart choices, when you align yourself with the right people, when you understand how the world really works." I glanced around the dining room, taking in the familiar sight of our regular customers enjoying their meals, the staff I knew by name, the artwork I'd personally selected for the walls. "It is beautiful," I agreed. "Beautiful and completely out of your reach," Patricia said with what she probably thought was gentle honesty. "And that's what I want to talk to you about. You need to be realistic about your future." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "My friend Margaret runs a temp agency downtown. She specializes in placing administrative assistants with good families. The pay isn't much, but it's honest work and you'd learn how successful people live. Maybe some of it would rub off on you." I stared at the business card, feeling the familiar mixture of hurt and frustration that came with Patricia's helpful advice. "I appreciate the thought, but I'm happy with my current work." "Current work?" Patricia's eyebrows shot up. "Emma, what you do isn't work. It's some kind of hobby you've convinced yourself is a career. Building websites, managing social media accounts for small businesses. That's not a real profession. That's something teenagers do for pocket money." Her voice was getting louder again, and I could see other diners starting to pay attention to our conversation. "The truth is, darling, and I say this because I love you, you'll never own anything nice if you keep pursuing these fantasies. You'll never have a house like mine, never shop where I shop, never eat at places like this unless someone takes pity on you and brings you along." She gestured grandly around the restaurant. "This establishment, for example. Do you have any idea what it costs to dine here regularly? The wine we're drinking tonight costs $200 a bottle. The meal you're eating costs more than you probably spend on groceries in a week. This isn't your world, Emma, and pretending it is will only make you unhappy." I could feel my cheeks burning with embarrassment, not because of what she was saying about my finances, but because of how loudly she was saying it. The couple at the next table was openly listening now, and I could see our server hovering nearby, clearly uncomfortable with the scene Patricia was creating. Maybe we should lower our voices, I suggested quietly. Oh, don't be embarrassed, sweetheart. There's no shame in acknowledging reality. The shame would be in continuing to live in denial. Patricia took another sip of the expensive wine and continued her lecture. You know what your problem is? You think you're too good for normal jobs. You think you're going to magically become successful doing these little computer projects instead of accepting that some people are meant for bigger things and some people are meant for smaller things. She reached across the table and patted my hand condescendingly. There's nothing wrong with being ordinary, Emma. Most people are ordinary. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start building a realistic life for yourself. That's when Marcus approached our table. Marcus was Bellecourt's general manager, a position he'd held for 3 years since I'd promoted him from assistant manager. He was excellent at his job, professional, discreet, and absolutely dedicated to ensuring every guest had an exceptional experience. "Excuse me, ladies," he said with his usual warm smile. "I hope you're enjoying your evening." Patricia immediately brightened, clearly pleased to be acknowledged by the restaurant's management. "Oh, it's wonderful as always," she gushed. "The service is impeccable, the food is divine. You run such an elegant establishment." "Thank you so much," Marcus replied graciously. Then he turned to me with a slight smile that Patricia couldn't see. "Ms. Williams, I hope everything has been satisfactory this evening? Is there anything at all you need?" I saw Patricia's face change as she processed what Marcus had just said. The way he'd addressed me, the deference in his tone, the slight bow of his head. It was the way staff address someone important, someone with authority. "Everything's been perfect, Marcus. Thank you for checking." "Excellent. And I wanted to let you know that the kitchen has prepared a special dessert to celebrate your guests this evening. Chef Rodriguez thought you might enjoy the chocolate soufflé with the 2018 port from your personal selection." "My personal selection." Patricia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "That sounds lovely," I said. "Please thank Chef Rodriguez for the thoughtful gesture." "Of course." "Oh, and Ms. Williams, I have those quarterly reports you requested on my desk whenever you'd like to review them. The profit margins for the third quarter exceeded our projections by 12%. The blood drained from Patricia's face. "Quarterly reports?" she whispered. Marcus nodded professionally. "Yes, the financial overview for Bellecourt and the other properties in the Williams Restaurant Group. Very impressive numbers this quarter." He turned back to me. "Will you be stopping by the office after dinner, or would you prefer I email the full breakdown to you tomorrow?" "Email is fine, Marcus. I'll review everything in the morning and we can discuss any adjustments to the winter menu next week." "Perfect. Enjoy the rest of your evening, Ms. Williams." "Ma'am." He nodded politely to Patricia and walked away. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia sat frozen, her fork still suspended in the air, staring at me like I'd just grown a second head. "Williams Restaurant Group?" she finally managed to croak. I took a sip of wine, the wine from my restaurant's reserve collection, and met her eyes calmly. "Yes. We own 12 restaurants across the city. Bellecourt was actually our first acquisition about 5 years ago." "Acquisition?" "We bought it when the previous owner was struggling financially. Chef Rodriguez and I redesigned the menu, Marcus restructured the service model, and we've turned it into one of the most profitable fine dining establishments in the region." Patricia's mouth was opening and closing like a fish out of water. But you said you do websites and social media?" "I do. That's how I started building the business. I helped small restaurants improve their online presence, which led to consulting on their operations, which led to partnership opportunities, which eventually led to acquisitions." I gestured around the dining room that Patricia had been using as an example of everything I could never achieve. "Every restaurant in our group started as a digital marketing client. We helped them grow, and when they were ready to expand or needed capital, we became investors and eventually owners." "How many restaurants did you say?" Patricia's voice was barely above a whisper. 12 currently. We're looking at expanding into the suburban markets next year, plus we're considering a catering division and a line of retail products." A server appeared with the special dessert Marcus had mentioned, an elaborate chocolate creation that I knew cost $35 and was typically reserved for our VIP guests. "Compliments of the house," the server said with a smile. Patricia stared at the dessert like it might explode. "Patricia," I said gently, "I need you to know something. When you said I'd never own anything nice, We were sitting in a restaurant that I've owned for 5 years. The wine you complimented? It's from our cellar. The impeccable service you praised? That's my staff. The elegant establishment you used as an example of success? That's my business. She was shaking now, her face cycling through emotions I couldn't quite identify. The truth is, I do shop where you shop. I do live in a nice house. A very nice house, actually. I just don't feel the need to broadcast my success or use it to make other people feel small. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo of my home, a restored Victorian mansion in the city's historic district. I bought this 3 years ago. It's where I live when I'm not staying at the penthouse downtown. Patricia stared at the photo, then back at me, then at the restaurant around us. But your apartment, your car? The apartment is a convenience for late work nights. The car is reliable and efficient. I prefer to invest in my businesses rather than displays of wealth. I took a bite of the chocolate souffle, which was exceptional as always. As for the temp job you offered, I appreciate the thought, but I'm quite busy managing my own company. The Williams Restaurant Group employs 347 people across our properties. We generated $23 million in revenue last year. Patricia made a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. You know what's funny? I continued. You've been lecturing me about accepting reality and understanding how the world works. But the reality is that while you've been judging me for not fitting your image of success, I've been building an actual business empire. I reached into my purse and pulled out my business card, something I'd never bothered to share with family before. Emma Williams, CEO and founder, Williams Restaurant Group. Patricia read aloud, her voice hollow. I started with a $500 website project for a struggling pizza place. 5 years later, I own a multi-million-dollar restaurant empire. Not because I aligned myself with the right people or married well, but because I saw opportunities and worked hard to capitalize on them. The server returned to refill our wine glasses, and I noticed other diners still glancing our way. Patricia had created quite a scene with her earlier lecture, and now they were probably wondering about the dramatic reversal in our conversation. Patricia, I want you to understand something. I don't need your friend Margaret's temp agency. I don't need to learn how successful people live by working for them. I am successful people. She was crying now, tears of embarrassment and shock streaming down her carefully made-up face. Emma, I don't understand. If you have all this, if you've built all this, why didn't you tell the family? Why let us think? Think what? That I was a failure? That I was drifting through life without purpose or direction? I set down my spoon and looked at her seriously. I let you think that because every time I tried to talk about my work, you dismissed it as a hobby. When I mentioned helping restaurants with their marketing, you said it wasn't a real job. When I talked about business opportunities, you told me to be more realistic. But if you'd known I was successful, you would have treated me differently. But success isn't what made me worthy of respect, Patricia. I was always worthy of respect. Marcus appeared again, this time with a bottle of champagne. Ms. Williams, this just arrived from the kitchen. Chef Rodriguez wanted to congratulate you on the positive review in Metro magazine. They called Bellacourt the crown jewel of the city's dining scene. He opened the champagne with practiced efficiency and poured 2 glasses. Also, I wanted to mention that the reservation system shows we're booked solid for the next 6 weeks. The waiting list is over 200 people. Patricia watched this exchange in stunned silence. That's wonderful news, Marcus. Please make sure the entire staff knows how much I appreciate their hard work. Of course. Oh, and the architect called about the renovation plans for the new location downtown. She can meet with you Thursday if that works with your schedule. Perfect. Send me the details tomorrow. After Marcus left, Patricia finally found her voice again. Emma, I owe you an apology. I owe you the biggest apology anyone has ever owed anyone. You don't owe me anything, Patricia. But I hope this helps you understand that success comes in many forms, and judging people based on appearances or preconceptions is usually a mistake. I raised my champagne glass. Here's to family dinners that end with better understanding. Patricia lifted her glass with a shaking hand. Here's to my niece who built an empire while I wasn't paying attention. We clinked glasses, and for the first time all evening Patricia was quiet. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Of course. The way Marcus talks to you, the way the staff treats you, they really respect you, don't they? It's not just because you own the place. I smiled. I hope so. I try to treat everyone with dignity and fairness. I remember what it was like to be dismissed and underestimated, so I make sure that doesn't happen to the people who work for me. Is that a reference to how I've treated you? Partly. But also to how I was treated when I was starting out. A lot of people didn't take me seriously when I was young and trying to build something. I learned that respect has to be earned through actions, not demanded through position or wealth. Patricia nodded slowly. I think I'm beginning to understand that. The evening concluded with Patricia asking genuine questions about my business, my plans, and my vision for the future. For the first time in years, we had a real conversation instead of a one-sided lecture about my shortcomings. As we prepared to leave, Marcus approached with the check, but I waved him away. Family dinner, I explained. Put it on my house account. Patricia stared at me as we walked toward the exit. House account. I eat here regularly. It's easier than processing payments each time. The valet brought my car around. Not the old Honda Patricia had been criticizing, but the Tesla I actually drove most days. Emma, Patricia said as I opened the driver's door. Thank you for tonight. Not just for dinner, but for opening my eyes. Thank you for being willing to listen. Can I ask one more favor? Sure. Next time we have dinner, can you choose the restaurant again? Because clearly you have much better taste than I gave you credit for. I laughed. I'd be happy to. And Patricia? You're always welcome at any of our restaurants. Family gets the VIP treatment. As I drove home to my Victorian mansion, I reflected on how completely the evening had changed. Patricia had learned that her assumptions about success and worth were deeply flawed, and I'd learned that sometimes the most effective way to change someone's mind is to let them discover the truth themselves. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. The champagne was a nice touch. See you tomorrow for the staff meeting. Tomorrow I would go back to being the quiet CEO who preferred running her business to talking about it. But tonight I was satisfied knowing that at least one person understood that success isn't always what it appears to be, and that judging people by their appearances is almost always a mistake. The restaurant industry was competitive and demanding, but it had taught me that the most important ingredient in any successful establishment wasn't the food or the atmosphere. It was respect. Respect for your customers, respect for your staff, and respect for the work itself. Too bad it had taken 5 years and a public revelation for my own family to learn that lesson.